Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Bobbi Pominville and I'm your arts reporter. And I do a lot of music and art and even language arts with you. But today I'm going into one of my favorite subjects, which is education. My guests are from the Hudson School District. Of course, I call it my alma mater. So we have a lot in common. We've all three been at EP Rock Elementary at one time or another. So let me tell you about Dave Grambow first. He has a BA, an MA, and an EDD or a Doctor of Education. He is the Chief Academic Officer and Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning for the Hudson School District. I also have Erin Schiltgen here, and she is she has a BA and an MA, and she's the Chief of Schools Officer. So I am very, very interested to hear what they have to say. First, I want to welcome Dave to the show.
Thank you, Bobbi. Glad to be here.
So glad you're here. And Erin, I want to welcome you especially too.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go through a few questions, and hopefully the audience will enjoy. And first, I don't know who's going to answer first, but I'm going to give you a question. What is Learning Support Services?
Yeah, well, I'll start out there, Bobbi. Thank you. So Learning Support Services is our department that we co-lead, and it is a creative new way of looking at delivering education. So my department is Teaching and Learning, while Erin's is Student Services. Teaching and Learning deals with your traditional curriculum instruction, assessment, that sort of thing, while Student Services deals with all the other services that we have in place to make sure that all students find success. And what we realize is that we need to work together more closely to make sure that all of the decisions we make proactively are made for all students in mind. So we created this department, Learning Support Services. We have a great team, and we make sure that when we're working to meet the needs of our kids, we're doing so with all kids in mind with every decision we make.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
And Erin, would you like to add anything?
I would just add to that, you know, instead of taking that siloed approach, it's really about focusing on the equitable outcomes for all kids and making sure that we're considering all of our students' needs from the get-go in our planning for curriculum instruction, support services, and programs. And I think we have better outcomes for our students when we're planning for those things from the start.
Oh, that's really interesting to me because things have changed quite a bit since I've been teaching. So I'm really enjoying this interview. Okay, now our next question is, what is the purpose of your department and what do you hope to accomplish this year? You may have talked a little bit about that already.
Sure, I think Erin can start off there.
So when we think about our department, we're really thinking about that idea of equity and making sure that all students are getting exactly what they need right when they need it. And so that's really a big focus of our department, and really looking at making sure that all students have the best outcomes possible, and making sure that they have equal access to programs, curriculum that's relevant to all of our students, those sorts of things. And then along with that is our phenomenal teaching staff, right? And really making sure that our teachers know how much we believe in them, and them building a sense of belief in themselves to meet the needs of all of our students.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. And you asked a little bit about our focus areas, and one of the areas that we focus on is what we call rigor, teamwork, and inclusion. And rigor, teamwork, and inclusion is a concept that we came up with when we recognized some issues that we were having as a district, but they're not unique to Hudson. They're issues that I think every district in the United States, at least in Wisconsin, are having. And that deals with a concept called response to intervention. And response to intervention isn't a new concept or structure, and it's actually a very solid framework that makes a lot of sense. Essentially what it's saying is when we work to meet the needs of students, we're going to be delivering instruction and intervention. And we need to make sure that students respond well to that. And if they don't, we need to adjust what we're doing to serve them and meet their needs. The problem is that concept was being expanded and used in ways that we felt weren't necessarily appropriate or were working against our objectives. And primarily what was happening is it was being used as a mechanism to label or silo kids. And as Erin mentioned before, that's the opposite of what we want to do. So we reframed that concept and decided to sort of reclaim it. And we came up with RTI Reimagine, which is based on the concept of rigor, teamwork, and inclusion. When we think about those concepts, every decision we make, we're always looking through those three lenses: rigor, teamwork, and inclusion. And we've realized that there's things that if we don't have all three of those elements in place, we lose out a little bit. So if you want to talk a little bit about the team,
Sure.
the rigor, teamwork, inclusion
So
team.
a few years ago, we established a rigor, teamwork, inclusion team, which is about 60 members strong and pulling staff from kind of all areas in our schools. So classroom teachers, school psychologists, school counselors, gifted and talented teachers, all sort of different programs to really start focusing on these different areas of rigor, or holding students to high expectations and having high expectations for all, that teamwork piece and that collaboration, and how we build structures around to make sure that happens. And then the inclusion piece, that making sure all students belong in all of our school environments. So it's been really exciting work. And I think it's a great way and mechanism for us to take these ideas and make sure that they're being embedded across all of our schools.
It sounds like a really great thing for inclusion for the students.
Yeah, it is.
And I know when I was teaching, there was some separating out, a lot of separating out and labeling.
Yep.
And so I really like this idea.
Yeah.
Because I
So
had
do
a
we.
lot of those, the special ones in my classes mainstreamed. And I really enjoyed them, and how they responded to music was wonderful. So this is great. I love what I'm hearing. I have another question.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Could you tell us about what teaching and learning looked like last year?
Sure. Well, I'll start out. And last year was quite the whirlwind, obviously. The entire nation, the entire world had to rethink everything, and our district was no different. The first thing that is clear is our teachers did an absolutely amazing job. They responded, they stepped up to the plate, and they had to rethink everything they did. Every aspect of what they would consider their normal job was turned upside down. They had to rethink with very little time to prepare, and they delivered. They did a heroic job. And our families and students did as well, because their world was turned upside down. And in some ways, more impactfully, if a family that maybe was working from home, maybe still had to go into the office, they had to rethink everything. So we created a flexible framework that allowed families to get what they needed as best we can. A lot of virtual education. We had over 61% of our students in the district at some point take part in what we call IDL, or individual distance learning. What that looks like, that is a teacher in their class having, say, 20 students in their class and another 6 at home receiving instruction from that teacher at the same time. The teacher had an audience on screen and their audience in front of them. Sometimes it was 20 and 6, sometimes it was 12 and 12, sometimes they would have a whole class that was at home receiving the instruction. That's a heavy lift for teachers. It was very challenging, and very challenging for our students as well. But we were able to maintain a fidelity to delivering the curriculum, not necessarily as intended, but as best we could given the circumstances. We learned a lot through that process.
Yes. I've heard a lot of comments about virtual learning from where I am now is kind of in the midst of the parents in the neighborhood.
Right.
And knowing a few of the students that are coming up that used to help me walk my dog and everything.
Yeah.
And just wonderful things happening. I mean, positivity is the way to go.
Sure.
What would you like to add?
To add to what Dave said too, I think it reinforced the work around equity and paying attention to our data for all students, and recognizing that there were some access gaps in terms of all sorts of things, technology, support, those sorts of things. And I think it really highlighted how much school provides that positive connection for kids. And the interaction with each other, the interactions with our staff, and the family engagement pieces were all highlighted as really important things that we need to continue to do and improve.
Yeah, a lot of people were talking about the virtual learning and making comments to me, knowing I was a former teacher in the district. But I just had wondered how on earth that would work for all the students. But you gave such great answers here. And of course, I have a grandnephew who's in 6th grade. So I'm always keeping up with him.
Sure.
And it's kind of fun to see what the other districts are doing. So I don't know. I just think if it worked out so beautifully like you just expressed, that is a real coup to the school district.
Yeah, the teachers did an amazing job. It's something we recognized is not sustainable, though. We couldn't ask teachers to engage in that again. We needed to get back to normal and allow families to make some choices, and some of those choices are difficult, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're doing the best we can to support our students, our families, and our teachers. One thing, too, that I was just thinking about when we talked about those lessons from the virtual education, we're talking about the rigor, teamwork, and inclusion framework. It sort of proved the importance of those 3 elements, because what we've learned is that if any one of those elements is missing, we don't have the complete experience that we'd like to have for our students. So for example, when we have teamwork and inclusion, but we don't have rigor, what we have is a very warm and welcoming environment, but not necessarily the expectations that we'd like to see. If we have rigor and inclusion, but we're lacking the teamwork, we have some unsustainable pockets of really great things, but it's not something we can say, we can guarantee this is for all of our kids. And then if we're lacking the inclusion, we have the rigor and the teamwork, what we have is a really collaborative network that works really well for some students, but not all students. So, and going virtual to such a large degree challenged those concepts. It was difficult to maintain the level of rigor we would expect. We just couldn't have the same expectations when we have so many of our students not with us. It challenged teamwork tremendously. Teachers weren't able to work together the way they normally would. Now, they did a great job. I think we all as a district did a nice job embracing the technology that we had at our hands. Kudos to our technology, our IT department that stepped up to create this network and this system that allowed us to deliver instruction to every single family in the district. If families didn't have internet access, our IT department made sure they had a hotspot. If they didn't have the devices, we got them the devices. So we really stepped up to make sure that everyone had those, and they did a great job doing that. But it still highlighted that we weren't able to necessarily deliver as we would like to or as we intended to. So it challenged those concepts and forced us to think a little bit differently.
Yeah, because I was worried about how are all the students going to come back to the classroom this fall, and of course school's already on, August 30th, I believe. But how are they all going to get back on the same page, and what if they've fallen behind, say, in math? Then that's going to take a lot of individual
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. And that is something that we are looking at. We're looking at ways we can support students that need a little bit more to make sure that they have a successful year this year. I will tell you, though, being in the schools throughout these first couple days, the level of excitement and enthusiasm and positivity is overwhelming. It was the beginning of the school year is always fun. It's always a time of optimism and excitement. It was different this year, having everyone back, a different sense of renewal that was inspiring.
Yeah, I can sense the excitement in my neighborhood. Okay, now that question was so important to me, and I think to our audience as well, to hear what's being done, and what a positive answer both of you gave. That was wonderful. Okay, we have another question. What are the priorities of your department?
Sure. Yeah, it's. I'll start off with the general priorities. This year we have a lot of things that we're focusing on. We have some priorities that sort of transcend any individual year. But when we look at what we're trying to accomplish on a regular basis, we're looking at our professional learning communities and inclusive practices, as we've talked about, making sure that in every one of our classrooms, we're doing our best to build the skills of all of our professionals so all kids can find success. And then making sure that we're balancing academic learning with social emotional learning. I think Erin has some more on that as well.
For sure. So with the inclusive practices, again, making sure that all our environments are as inclusive as possible and all students belong in every single place within our schools. And also having our teachers feel like they believe that they can meet the needs of all of those kids is a big focus of our department this year, and I think reinforced by what we learned last year as well. Social emotional learning and mental health is something that really in the past few years has kind of risen to a priority within our district, and again reinforced by COVID. And making sure that we are building strong connections with our students, that they feel connected to the adults within our building, and that they have the social and emotional and learning skills to be successful not only in school but in life after school. So really focusing on that at every level this year, which is exciting.
That's some of the things that I worry about, and I just, I have a memory of a lot of students that really were not emotionally secure, and I know what that's like and how hard it is to work to include them. So your departments are just absolutely on top of everything, and I truly commend you for that.
Thank you.
And I don't know, is there going to be an addition of staff to do that, or how is that going to be handled?
In terms of the social, emotional, and mental health,
Yeah.
yes and no. So at the middle school and high school, we did add an additional school counselor that started last year, which was
Good.
a huge step in the right direction in building that support for students.
Yes.
And making sure that those staff have manageable caseloads. We're also taking some steps with professional development so that all certified staff have some training in how to respond to students who are struggling with a mental health issue, but also how to build social and emotional skills at their particular grade level, so that students who go through Hudson have a similar experience in that regard from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade.
Wow.
So
That's covering everything, and from what you said, and I think our school district is on the cutting edge of all the new things from what you people have told me, and even things I don't think about every day, like the teaching and learning. I mean, I was very focused on being a teacher who included everyone, and in music it was pretty easy. But I could see where in other subjects you would lose, a little bit of some of the students in that.
Sure.
And it's so important for them to feel like they're included. And I know a lot of our teachers do that all the time
they
anyway.
do. We have
Absolutely.
some, yep.
Yeah, so that's a really important point for me.
Well,
But-
I'm going to interrupt a little bit just
Yes,
because
please.
as you're describing that, so having worked with you, Bobbi, and knowing the kind of teacher that you were and are,
Yeah.
we just had a keynote that addressed the entire staff, and he talked about the joy in learning. And when kids went into your classroom, they found joy. They were welcomed. They knew they belonged. That's what we're working on. And the beauty is, all of our teachers want that and already know how to do it. They just need more support. It's not about knowing what to do or changing what they want to do. It's about making sure they have the support to be successful. We engage in a process called rounding, where as the Department of LSS, we go from school to school and we visit with teachers and we ask them some simple questions to get a sense of what's happening out there. And the entire district does this. All the leaders in the district go through this process called rounding. And one of the things we found was that desire for more skills with social emotional learning rose right to the top. Teachers are saying, we need more because things are changing and we need to be able to respond to those changes.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that teachers always were striving for, and being comfortable with all those kind of things in the classroom. And I think in some ways it was a lot easier for me, because not teaching the more academic subjects, sometimes students have anxieties. And so this was really easy for me to draw them in. And I know my first day of kindergarten class, A lot of times it would fall on the first day of school, and of course some would be crying, and there would be quite a brouhaha, until I took out a drum.
Yeah.
And then the students just looked at me the whole rest of the time, and they said, what is she going to do with that drum? Who's going to get to play it? And I would say, I'm looking for someone who's watching the teacher, quietly sitting, and the best one is going to play the drum first. But don't worry, you will all get a chance.
Yeah.
And that's how they were just, it was so easy to control that angst and everything else on the first day. But anyway, that was one of my tricks.
I think it's a great example, though, of establishing that connection and the safe environment
Yes.
before having students step forward into learning those tough skills. And if they feel those things, they can do challenging work.
Yes.
But if they don't feel those things, it's more difficult to get to that academic rigor that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So the exciting piece out of rounding is that our staff want the skills to be able to do that with all of their students.
Yes.
It doesn't have to happen somewhere else. It's that all of our students need those social emotional learning skills.
So you actually go into the schools and you ask or you teach them certain things, and then I know most teachers would be overjoyed to be learning more about it.
Oh, it absolutely. That's been inspiring. Watching all of our teachers strive to find ways just to refine and hone those skills to meet the needs of all their kids. And Erin said it so well. It's about the foundational sort of cultural elements in a school or a classroom that allow students to find success. And kids will always change. Culture changes. It evolves, and we need to learn along with kids and not expect that they're going to change to fit our models.
That's right. I do know some rigid teachers from my time, and it's the first year I came in here, teaching was really different, and even between the two different schools, I went to 4 elementaries, and I was like, wow, comparing, I would learn so much from the veteran teachers, of course, and then there'd be I don't know, kind of a big question mark of are you going to be well prepared, and how you realize after a couple of years how much you really don't know, and you need to learn more, and you have to learn more, and then that comes into play, and so here's something now different because you're already addressing that.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a goal that we have as a learning support services department, is to make sure that we're present, that we're engaged, and we truly know what's going on in our schools, in our classrooms, and we're hearing from the stakeholders, from the teachers, from students, from community members, to make sure that we're responsive to the needs. It obviously, it's always a challenge. Everyone's busy, and we can all be drawn back into the office, but trying to be as deliberate as we can. And again, that's a district-wide initiative. Everyone in the district, our entire, what we call Hudson Lead, which is a large group of leaders throughout the district, we're all engaged in that rounding process to make sure that we're hearing what's happening and we're able to look for themes and improve our processes.
Wonderful. Wow, what an interesting discussion, because we really didn't plan this.
No.
But that's the beauty of an interview, how you can think of other items and other things to add. And you two have just been wonderful to talk to for me, because I feel like I'm kind of caught up now in the district. And I just have always been so proud of the Hudson School District. So I thank you so much for coming today. I've enjoyed it so much talking with both of you. So personally, thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Bobbi. This was
And
great.
thank you,
very much.
Erin. And I will say to the audience, I hope you enjoyed this particular show. You learned a lot about education in the Hudson schools, and I definitely want to pursue it a little more myself. So thanks again for watching. I know I get a lot of comments back, and I'd love to hear some feedback on my website. Thank you.